They say death is the great unknown, a door through which all must pass, yet none can return. But what if I told you that, for 7 minutes, I crossed that threshold, not in dream, not in vision, but in the stillness between one heartbeat and the next? I remember this silence first, not the absence of sound, but the presence of something greater than sound, like the space between notes that makes the music possible. My body lay still, somewhere far away, but I was moving through something vast. And in that space, I saw truths that no book had ever told me, yet somehow I had always known. For centuries, mystics, shamans, and seekers have whispered of this realm, the place where the soul journeys when the body releases its hold. Ancient Egyptians called it the duat, the Tibetan sages mapped it in the Bardo Thodol, and Greek philosophers spoke of the river Lethe, whose waters dissolve the memory of life. But beyond the symbols and metaphors, there is an experience, raw, unfiltered, impossible to mistake. And for 7 minutes, it was mine. In this video, I will share not just what I saw, but what it meant. We will walk together through the landscapes of that other world, the strange light, the living geometry, the voices that spoke without sound. We will explore how my journey mirrors the accounts from ancient spiritual traditions and what they reveal about the nature of consciousness, the afterlife, and the profound truth of who or what we really are. You will hear of a place where time folds in on itself, where colors sing and silence speaks, and where the deepest questions of existence are not answered in words, but in knowing. But this is not just a story about death. This is about life, about the way such an experience transforms the way you walk, breathe, and love when you return. And perhaps as you listen, you will sense echoes of your own soul's memory, fragments of a truth you've carried since before you were born. So let us step beyond the veil together for just a moment. Because once you glimpse what lies there, nothing, not even death, will ever feel the same again.
Throughout the history of humankind, those who have tasted the edge of death and returned have been regarded with a mixture of reverence and fear. In many cultures, the death walker was seen not as a victim of fate, but as a messenger, someone who had journeyed into the realms beyond and returned bearing a fragment of its wisdom. In the temples of ancient Egypt, initiates underwent elaborate rituals designed to simulate the passage into the duat, the afterlife realm ruled by Osiris. These rites were not mere superstition. They were an intentional rehearsal for the moment the soul would step beyond the body. The Egyptian Book of the Dead is less a funerary text than a guidebook for the traveler, teaching the spirit how to navigate strange landscapes, pass through gates guarded by beings of light and shadow, and remember the passwords that allow safe passage. In Tibet, monks chanted the Bardo Thodol into the ears of the dying, a map for the 49-day journey between death and rebirth. Here, the soul meets dazzling lights, each representing a different realm of being, and is challenged to recognize them not as threats or temptations, but as aspects of its own mind. The Greeks spoke of katabasis, the descent into the underworld undertaken by heroes like Orpheus and Odysseus. Plato, in his myth of told the story of a soldier who died in battle, saw the structure of the cosmos, and returned to warn humanity of the choices that determine the soul's fate after death. Even in shamanic traditions from the Amazon to Siberia, the little death experienced during trance or plant medicine ceremonies was seen as a brush with the same reality we encounter at life's end. The shaman, like the near-death experiencer, journeys into the spirit world to heal, to learn, and to bring back medicine, not always the physical kind. Across these traditions, a pattern emerges. Death is not the annihilation of the self, but a change in the landscape of awareness. The soul's journey is not random, it follows ancient archetypal pathways. And the greatest danger is not the darkness itself, but forgetting who you are within it. What struck me after my 7 minutes was how familiar it all felt, as if the symbols I had once read about were simply metaphors for something my spirit already knew. Perhaps these ancient maps, though drawn in different languages, all point toward the same place, a realm where the boundaries between self and universe dissolve, and where the truth of our existence is no longer hidden beneath the veil of ordinary perception. This is the place I went, and now we will step closer to it, not through myth or ritual, but through the direct experience that forever changed the way I see life, death, and everything in between.
When my heart stopped, the first thing I noticed was not darkness. It was the sensation of being released, as if I had been carrying a great weight my entire life without realizing it. Imagine wearing a heavy coat for decades, only to remove it and feel the air touch your skin for the first time. That was the beginning. Then there was the light. But it wasn't a single point in the distance like so many near-death accounts describe. It was everywhere, yet it didn't blind me. It was as if the light wasn't coming from outside but from within me, and I had simply forgotten it was there. Each shimmer in that radiance seemed to contain knowledge, living, breathing meaning. I found myself in what I can only describe as a field of shifting geometry, shapes that pulsed, unfolded, and reassembled, not static but alive, like a cosmic organism. The closest analogy I can give is this. Imagine that the laws of mathematics, music, and love had merged into a single language, and that language was speaking itself into form all around you. The geometry felt less like scenery and more like being inside the mind of the universe. In that space, I felt a presence. Not a figure with a face, but an intelligence that knew everything about me, my joys, my failures, my deepest fears, and loved me not in spite of them, but through them. It was as if every choice I had ever made was understood in perfect context, without judgment. Here's the strange thing. Time didn't pass, or rather, it passed in all directions at once. I could sense my childhood, my last breath, and countless moments in between, not as memories but as living events happening right now. It was like standing on a mountaintop where you can see the entire river of your life flowing below, from its source to its mouth, all in one view. Ancient traditions speak of this phenomenon. In the Bardo teachings, the soul perceives clear light, the unfiltered nature of reality. In Hermetic philosophy, there's the concept of the all, the idea that all time, all matter, and all thought exist as one interconnected whole. That is exactly how it felt, not that I was in the universe, but that I was the universe, momentarily remembering itself. But here's where it becomes more profound. The me that was experiencing this was not the same self who is speaking to you now. The ordinary self, the one with fears, opinions, and an identity, was gone. What remained was something purer, vaster, yet unmistakably me. And in that recognition came the first great truth of those 7 minutes. You are not the small story you've been telling yourself. You are the storyteller, and the story, and the page it's written on.
Beyond the shimmering field of living geometry, there was a boundary, though not like a wall or a door. It was more like the edge of a dream where the scene begins to thin and you sense another reality just beyond it. Crossing it was not a decision in the way we think of choices here. It was more like remembering that I had always been able to cross. The moment I did, I felt myself dissolving into something infinitely vast. If the first realm had been the mind of the universe, this was its heart. There were no shapes, no colors, no sounds, only being. Imagine the deepest silence you've ever known, but inside that silence, there is a hum, a vibration like the breath of creation itself. It wasn't empty, it was full of potential, full of life, full of everything. And yet, there was no me as I had known it. The awareness that remained was boundless, without edges. It is difficult to put into words because our language is built for separation, for this and that. But in that place, there was no this or that. There was only is. It was here that I understood something that shook me to my core. Death is not an ending, it is a return. Not to a place you've never been, but to a home you've simply forgotten. The fear we carry about it comes from identifying too strongly with the temporary self, the actor in the play, forgetting that we are also the stage, the audience, and the light that illuminates it all. The ancient Upanishads of India whisper this truth, Tattvamasi, thou art that. The that is the eternal, the unchanging, the essence behind all forms. In the moment of dissolution, those words were not philosophy, they were reality. I didn't believe them, I was them. And yet there was also an awareness, subtle but undeniable, that I could go further still. Beyond this unity, there was a vastness so complete, so absolute, that even the concept of experience would dissolve. I sensed it as the source, the origin from which all realities emerge. But to step into it fully would mean not returning. The pull was beautiful, irresistible, and yet something held me. It wasn't fear, it was love. And not the love of clinging, but the love that calls you back to fulfill what you came here to do. I understood, without words, that I had threads still woven into the tapestry of life. People I had yet to meet, acts I had yet to perform, lessons still unfolding in the realm of time. And so, like a tide pulling back toward the shore, I felt myself condensing, not in body, but in identity. The boundlessness gently wrapped itself in the garment of me once more. The geometry returned, the light softened, the hum faded into the faint rhythm of a heartbeat. And then I was back. 7 minutes had passed, but the part of me that returned was not the same that had left. I had been rewoven, carrying within me a memory too vast to contain, yet impossible to forget. From that moment, life has never looked the same. Every breath, every leaf, every face I pass on the street shimmers with a quiet significance, as if I am looking at the world from both sides of the veil at once. And this is where the experience transforms from story into practice, where what I saw becomes something you can use here in the living world.
What I brought back from those 7 minutes is not just a memory. It's a way of seeing, a way of living that anyone can cultivate without having to stand at death's door. The truth is, the other side is not some distant, unreachable realm. It is here, woven into this very moment, hidden only by the veil of our constant mental noise. The first lesson is presence. In the realm beyond, there is no past and no future, only the eternal now. The closest we can come to that in life is to truly be where we are. This isn't just about slowing down. It's about dropping into the immediacy of each breath, each sound, each sensation. Practice. Once a day, stop for 1 minute. Close your eyes. Listen, not just to the obvious sounds, but to the subtle ones, like the hum of electricity or the faint rustle of your clothes. Let them be your anchor. That simple act begins to thin the veil. The second lesson is non-judgment. On the other side, my life was laid bare without shame or praise, only understanding. Here we can begin to mirror that by witnessing our thoughts and actions without the constant overlay of self-criticism or pride. Practice. When you catch yourself judging, whether it's yourself, a stranger, or a situation, pause. Imagine you are seeing it from the perspective of that boundless presence I described. From there, nothing is good or bad. It simply is. And all has a purpose. The third lesson is remembering who you are. In life, we mistake ourselves for the role we're playing, the worker, the parent, the dreamer, the struggler. In death, all those roles fall away, and what remains is your essence, vast, unshakable, eternal. Practice. At night before sleeping, silently repeat, I am not the story. I am the storyteller. Feel the truth of that, even just for a breath. Over time, this loosens your grip on the false self and strengthens your connection to the deeper one. There's also a practical reason to cultivate these states. When the moment comes to step beyond this life, familiarity with them will make the passage smoother. The Tibetans call it dying before you die, practicing release while alive so that death is simply another breath, another doorway. Perhaps the most surprising change is how these practices transform life. You begin to see beauty where you once saw nothing. You listen more deeply because you sense every conversation might be the last in this form. You love more freely because you recognize that love is the only thing you can take with you. And so while my journey into death was brief, its echo is long. You don't need 7 minutes beyond the veil to touch what I touched. You only need to pause, listen, and remember to step into the eternal that has been within you all along.
7 minutes. That's all it was on the clock. But it was enough to strip away everything I thought I knew about life, death, and who I am. I went beyond the heartbeat, beyond the mind, beyond the story, and touched a place where all things meet, a place where geometry sings, silence speaks, and love is not an emotion, but the very fabric of reality. I saw that death is not an ending, it is a return, a homecoming to a self so vast it cannot be contained in flesh or words. And when I came back, I understood something simple, yet world-shattering. We do not live to prepare for death. We live to remember life. Not the surface life of appointments and worries, but the deeper life, the luminous thread that connects every breath, every soul, every star. The ancients knew this. That's why they mapped the realms, told the myths, wrote the guidebooks for the soul. They weren't obsessed with death, they were in love with life. And they understood that to truly live, one must know what lies beyond it. You don't have to wait until your heart stops to glimpse that truth. You can taste it here, now, in the stillness between thoughts, in the way sunlight rests on a leaf, in the unguarded laughter of someone you love. Each of these moments is a door, and every door leads to the same eternal place. So tonight, when the world quiets, take one breath as if it were your first and your last. Feel the miracle of it. That is the beginning of the path I walked, the path we are all walking, whether we know it or not. Because in the end, there is no end, only the eternal unfolding and the remembering of who you truly are.